Welcome to the History and Heritage Podcast with me, Liam Blake. Join me as we uncover hidden stories and insights that shaped our world. From mysteries to legacies, join us on this journey through time. Hello everyone. I was going to start a new format where I try to do an episode without a proper full word-by-word script. However, I was too busy this week to prepare properly for it, so today is not that day. But I am doing a new series. In this series, I do place names, starting with Charleville. Charleville is a name that carries two remarkable stories in Ireland. One belongs to a plantation town in County Cork, founded in the turbulence of the 17th century, and the other belongs to a Gothic fantasy castle in County Offaly, one of the grandest architectural creations of its age. Both are places of ambition, drama, resilience, and legend, and both remind us that behind every name there is more than one story to be told. The story of Charleville in County Cork begins with Roger Boyle, the first Earl of Orrery. In 1661, after the restoration of Charles II to the throne of England, Boyle decided to establish a new town in Munster. He named it Charleville in honour of the new king. This was no small act of loyalty, because Boyle had previously been a supporter of Oliver Cromwell. By attaching the king's name to the new creation, Boyle was showing that he could shift allegiances with the political tide, and that he understood how names themselves could serve as a declaration of loyalty and identity. Yet, Boyle was not founding something out of nothing. The place he chose already carried centuries of memories. Long before it was Charleville, it was known as Rathlurk or Rathgoggan or Rathcogan, names that echo the rhymes of an older Ireland, stretching back over 1,000 years. His new town was, in many ways, a reinvention of a much older settlement. Boyle's Charleville was conceived as a planned town, an orderly creation in the style of 17th century plantations. It reflected the ideology of the Munster plantation, which aimed to reorder land, power, and identity in Ireland. Two broad parallel streets were laid out, and the town was granted a charter that gave it civic institutions: a sovereign, 2 bailiffs, and 12 burgesses. The new Charleville was intended as a Protestant stronghold in a deeply Catholic countryside, and its very streets were designed to reflect authority, order, and control. But even as it projected authority, it also carried within it the tensions of its time. Boyle himself built his principal residence nearby, in Charleville House. Completed in 1668, it was considered one of the finest houses in Ireland, grand, imposing, and built to reflect his own power. It stood as a symbol of the Boyles family wealth and ambition. Yet this splendour did not last. In 1690, amid the upheavals of the Williamite Wars, Jacobite forces under the Duke of Berwick descended upon the estate. They set fire to Charleville House, burning it to the ground. The flames consumed not just timber and stone, but a vision of power. The destruction of the house in that violent year was part of a wider cycle of devastation in Ireland, a reminder that political loyalty and architectural ambition could not shield one from the turbulence of war. In the centuries that followed, Charleville, like so many Irish towns, endured the long shadow of the penal laws. For much of the 18th century, Catholic worship was restricted. The parish was amalgamated with neighbouring districts, and the old chapel at Holy Cross Cemetery was left abandoned. Faith, however, did not die. Catholic life carried on in hidden corners and improvised spaces, a quiet resilience that outlasted oppression. The history of Charleville is marked not only by great houses and grand gestures, but also by perseverance of ordinary people clinging to their traditions through times of adversity. By the late 18th and early 19th centuries, the town was undergoing transformation. Charleville began to take on much of the elegant Georgian character that still shapes its streetscape today. Its markets and fairs flourished, and it became a lively hub of trade. Cattle and pigs were brought in from the surrounding Golden Vale, the richest dairying land in Europe. Hardware and merchandise changed hands. Weekly markets bustled, and 6 annual fairs drew traders and customers from far and wide. Charleville was no longer simply a plantation project or a scarred site of conflict. It had become a genuine market town, deeply embedded in the rhythms of local life and economy. The town's religious landscape also changed. In the late 19th century, Catholics expressed their growing confidence with the construction of Holy Cross Church, an imposing neo-Gothic building erected between 1898 and 1902. Inside, mosaics by Ludwig Oppenheimer glittered, and stained glass from the Harry Clark studio coloured the light. Holy Cross was not just a parish church. It was a statement, a declaration that Catholic faith, once pushed underground, now stood proudly at the heart of Charleville. At the same time, the Protestant presence also evolved. St. James's Church of Ireland was built in the 1840s on the site of Boyle's original Protestant church. But by the late 20th century, with demographics shifting, it was no longer a place of worship. Instead, it found new life as Charleville's town library, a living symbol of how buildings change with communities. What once was sectarian exclusivity has become a shared civic resource. Charleville has also produced remarkable people whose stories carry far beyond the town. Eliza Lynch was born there, corner house on Clancy Terrace. She would go on to become a Parisian courtesan and the mistress of Francisco Solano Lopez, the president of Paraguay. Today she is remembered in Paraguay as a national heroine and a figure of glamour and controversy whose journey from a small Munster town to the centre of South American politics still astonishes. Daniel O'Connell, the Liberator, visited Charleville often too. He opened the National Bank here in 1835 and addressed one of his famous monster meetings in 1843. His presence linked Charleville to the great movements of 19th century Ireland. The town also produced Daniel Mannix, born nearby, who would become the Archbishop of Melbourne and one of the most influential Irish figures in the diaspora, and particularly in the diaspora of the Catholic Church. His tenure in Australia lasted nearly half a century, and his voice carried Irish causes to an international stage. Another Daniel A. Binchy, was born in Charleville in what is now Brewder's Coffee Shop. Binchy became Ireland's first minister to Germany and produced a prophetic analysis of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi movement. He once wrote, chillingly, and I quote, "No lunatic with the gift of oratory is harmless." Charleville's sons and daughters did not merely belong to the town. They belonged to the wider world, shaping histories far beyond their place of birth. Even the town's very name became contested ground. In 1920, Sinn Féin's authorities declared that Charleville should be named Rathlurk, reaching back to its older Irish name. In 1975, the legal title An Rath was imposed, reflecting a moment when cultural revival and political assertion pushed English titles aside. But in 1989, a plebiscite was held, and the people voted decisively to restore the name Charleville. The town's identity, like its streets, has been shaped by centuries of negotiation between old and new, Irish and English, memory and modernity. Industry too has shaped its destiny. In the 19th century, Charleville had tanneries, blanket factories and flour mills. In the 20th, it became a centre of food processing, with Kerry Group and Dawn Meats turning the surrounding Golden Vale's produce into global exports. Today, Charleville stands at a crossroads of Cork and Limerick, thriving not just as a town of history, but as a living part of Ireland's agricultural economy. Its twinning with towns in Brittany and Crosgoch in Wales reflects a modern echo of the role it has always played: a crossroads, a meeting place, and a point of connection. That is one Charleville, but another story waits, further north, in County Offaly. Near the town of Tullamore, in the heart of County Offaly, rises one of the most remarkable Gothic revival structures in Ireland, Charleville Castle. Its towers and turrets dominate the landscape, but the story of this site goes back much further than the 19th century stonework suggests. Long before Gothic grandeur, this was a sacred ground, linked to Lynally Monastery, founded in the 6th century by Saint Colman, or Colman. For centuries, it was a place of prayer and community, long before it became a stage of ambition, drama, and legend. By the 17th century, a new chapter began. In 1641, Thomas Moore built a mansion on the site, establishing it as the seat of wealth and landed power. That house was a statement in itself, but it was only a prelude. The estate's destiny would be transformed in 1764, when Charles William Bury, not yet 6 months old, inherited it. His life seemed marked for drama from the very start. When Bury turned 21, he threw a celebration to mark his coming of age. It was 1785, the age of the Enlightenment, and nothing was too extravagant. A demonstration of a hot air balloon was planned in Tullamore, the kind of marvel that had only recently amazed audiences in Paris and London. But the wonder turned to disaster. The balloon lost control, crashing into houses. Flames spread through the town, and in the words of the Hibernian Journal, it became a scene of desolation almost beyond imagination. Contemporary reports describe roofs caving in and families fleeing the streets as half of the town was consumed. It was, historians believe, the world's first recorded fatal ballooning accident. To his credit, Bury did not turn away. He financed the rebuilding of Tullamore, linking his family forever to the town in a cycle of ruin and redemption. But Bury was ambitious for more than just repairs. In 1798, the year of the rebellion in Ireland, he commissioned one of the most celebrated Irish architects of the age, Francis Johnston. Johnston would go on to design the GPO in Dublin and the Chapel Royal in Dublin Castle, but here in Offaly he created what many call his masterpiece. Between 1800 and 1812, Johnston oversaw the creation of Charleville Castle, neo-Gothic in design, vast in scale. It rose with a central tower and 4 circular corner turrets, all meant to impress. It was not simply a house, it was a statement of grandeur, power, and taste. Construction was laborious and costly. Local tradition claims it consumed the equivalent of 1,400 men-years of labour. Generations of craftsmen, masons, carpenters, and plasterers, carved their skill into its fabric. The entrance was designed to resemble a Masonic lodge, a nod to the Bury family's affiliations. Even the gardens bore symbolism. Yeah, don't even get me started on the masons, but anyways. One was famously laid out in the shape of a Union Jack, a visible declaration of the family's staunch unionist politics. The house, in case you hadn't guessed already, combined politics and artistry. In the 1890s, the arts and crafts designer William Morris left his mark on the dining room ceiling, stenciling delicate patterns that brought a new layer of beauty to Johnston's Gothic shell. A visitor in 1906 described the interior as a wonder of intricate design, where Morris's subtle colours dance on the high plasterwork. The family continued to weave global stories into their local estate. Colonel Charles Kenneth Howard Bury, a later heir, was a man of many talents. Soldier, diplomat, linguist, and explorer. In 1920, he held the first British reconnaissance expedition to Mount Everest. Though his team did not reach the summit, their maps, photographs, and notes later laid the groundwork for future expeditions. His account of the journey captured the imagination of readers back home. He wrote of the Himalayas, "There are no words that can do justice to their immensity. One can only stand in awe." His name became linked not only with Everest but with Charleville Castle, bringing global prestige to its halls. Yet fortunes turned. By 1912, the castle was uninhabited. The 20th century was not kind to such great houses. Fast forward to the 1960s, and the roof was deliberately removed to avoid paying high property taxes. The great Gothic structure was declared a ruin. Rain and wind invaded rooms once designed for splendour. Ceilings collapsed. And for a time it seemed that the story of Charleville Castle had ended in decay. But all was not lost. From the late 1970s, a slow but determined revival began. Michael McMullen, Constance Heavy Sequist, Bonnie Vance, and others formed what became the Charleville Castle Heritage Trust. They called it Gradual and Loving Restoration, carried out not by wealthy elite, but by volunteers, heritage enthusiasts, and local supporters. Piece by piece, they salvaged and repaired, keeping the building alive as a space for art, festivals, and community. Yet alongside the architectural story lies another, the story of its ghosts. Charleville Castle has long been regarded as one of the most haunted sites in Europe. Its most famous spirit is Harriet, the daughter of the 3rd Earl of Charleville. In April 1861, the 8-year-old was sliding down the grand staircase banister when she lost her balance and fell, breaking her neck. Since then, stories abound of her presence. Visitors speak of the chill on the staircase, of laughter echoing when no child is present, of a small figure glimpsed in blue and white with golden curls. The castle's event coordinator, Terry Dale Kearney, has spoken publicly about her own experiences. A resident ghost is Harriet. She has been here for years. I have had more than a few experiences. Other tales deepen the mystery. Photographers claim to have captured misty shapes, glowing orbs, and shadows crossing empty rooms. Paranormal investigators report screams recorded on tape, footsteps where no one is there. One visitor recounted how a young boy, exploring with his family, vanished briefly only to return saying that he had been helped down the stairs by a boy and a girl. Folklore insists the castle was built on ley lines, and some tell of hooded figures glimpsed along corridors. Outside, the ancient king oak carries its own curse. If a branch falls, the belief was that a member of the Bury family would die. When the tree was struck by lightning in 1963, locals recalled with unease that Colonel Howard Bury himself died that same year. These stories, whether one believes them or not, have become a part of identity of Charleville Castle. They coloured its atmosphere, drawing television crews and ghost hunters. The programme Most Haunted, filmed here, added to its reputation. But the castle is more than a stage for the supernatural. It has become a cultural venue, a place where history, heritage and creativity meet. In recent decades, it has appeared on screen in Becoming Jane, Northanger Abbey, The Green Knight, and in a series, Rain, where it stood for the French court. It houses the Explorers Museum, celebrating Howard Bury and the spirit of adventure. The Heritage Trust continues to run events, tours and festivals, ensuring that the castle is not frozen in the past but alive and present. So what does Charleville Castle tell us? It tells us of ambition. Charles William Bury's dream realised in stone. It tells us of disaster, a balloon fire that destroyed a town, a child's fall that left a ghost. It tells us of artistry, Francis Johnston's vision, William Morris's hand, and it tells us of resilience, the volunteers who saved it from ruin and the communities who keep it all alive. 2 Charlevilles, 2 legacies, both testaments to the way history shapes and is shaped by the places we live.